What if you were blamed for something you didn't do? What if they locked you up, took you to court, and sentenced you to die? And no matter how many times you screamed, "I'm innocent," no one listened. These are the stories of 5 innocent people who were sentenced to death and executed for crimes they didn't commit. This is the series where we ask, how many more were lost in silence? You can subscribe to Unbelievable True Story to discover lots of underlying mysteries buried in histories. Number 1. George Stinney Jr. George was just a child. He liked riding his bike. He helped his dad feed the family cow. He loved playing with his younger sister, Aim. He lived in a small black community called Alcaloo. Families here were poor, but they worked hard. In this town, the black neighborhood and the white neighborhood were separated by train tracks, by skin color, by fear. On March 23, 1944, 2 white girls, Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Thames, 7, rode their bikes into the black part of town. They were looking for flowers. That's when they saw George and his sister Aim sitting near the road. The girls asked, "Do you know where we can find maypops?" George shrugged. Aim said they didn't know. That was the last time anyone saw the girls alive. Later that day, the girls didn't come home. By nightfall, a search began. People lit lanterns. Sheriffs came with dogs. The next morning, their bodies were found in a muddy ditch near the railroad. Their skulls had been crushed with a railroad spike. The town was quiet. The air turned cold. And before long, people wanted someone to blame. That same day, police came to George's house. They knocked on the door and grabbed him, right in front of his parents. No warrant. No lawyer. No explanation. They said George had confessed. But no one ever saw the written confession. And no one ever heard it. His family wasn't allowed to see him. He was locked in jail. Alone. Scared. Crying for his mother. George's trial happened just 30 days later. His lawyer was a man who didn't call a single witness. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't even defend the boy. All-white jury. No black people. No evidence. The trial lasted just 2 hours. The jury took 10 minutes to decide. Guilty. Death. George's life was over. And the court didn't care. On June 16, 1944, George was led into the execution chamber. He was 14. So small, they had to stack books on the electric chair seat. So small, the straps didn't fit. He was crying. He had a Bible in his hand. The guard asked if he had any last words. George said, "No, sir." Then they put the mask over his head. But it was too big. When the electricity rushed through his body, the mask flew off. The witnesses saw his face. The pain. The terror. The child. George was buried in an unmarked grave. His family was forced to move out of town. No one spoke of it again. Decades passed. But people who knew the truth never forgot. He was just a boy. And they killed him. In the early 2000s, a group of lawyers, historians, and activists began digging. They found the old court papers. The lies. The silence. The missing confession. They found no real evidence. No defense. No justice. They took the case to court again. And in 2014, 70 years later, the judge gave his ruling. George Stinney's conviction is vacated. He never received a fair trial. It was too late to save his life. But not too late to clear his name. Number 2. Carlos DeLuna. Carlos DeLuna was just 20 years old. He had grown up poor. Struggled with school. But he had never killed anyone. He had a small record, mostly petty stuff. Nothing violent. But that night, he was near the gas station. Running. He said he had nothing to do with the murder. He said he ran because he saw a man. A man named Carlos Hernandez. Stabbing the woman. But police didn't believe him. They caught Carlos DeLuna hiding under a truck. And that was all they needed. At trial, Carlos told the same story. I didn't do it. It was Carlos Hernandez. He had a knife. But prosecutors said Carlos Hernandez didn't exist. They called him a ghost. They laughed in court. There is no such person, they said. Carlos made him up. The jury believed them. Even though no blood was found on Carlos DeLuna's clothes. No weapon was found near him. And his fingerprints weren't at the scene. Still, he was found guilty. Carlos was sentenced to death by lethal injection. He cried. He begged. He said it over and over. Please, I didn't do this. But the courts didn't care. They said it was over. Final. On December 7, 1989, Carlos was led to the death chamber. He was 27 years old. His last words were, I want to say I hold no grudges. I forgive you all. Then they injected the drugs. And his heart stopped. After Carlos DeLuna's death, reporters started asking questions. One of them found something shocking. There was a Carlos Hernandez. He lived just blocks away. He looked almost exactly like DeLuna. And he had a long history of knife attacks. He had even bragged to people. Some other dude took the fall for me. He had a mugshot. He had a record. He was real. The justice system never even searched for him. Lawyers and reporters dug deeper. They found photos, files, old reports. Carlos Hernandez had a pattern. Stabbings, threats, knife violence. But by then, it was too late. Carlos DeLuna was gone. And the courts never admitted the mistake. In 2012, the Columbia University Law School released a massive report. They called the case a tragic mistake. A man was executed for a crime committed by someone else. They found DeLuna's defense lawyer had done almost nothing. The state had buried evidence. And the police had ignored the real suspect. All because they wanted a quick answer. Someone to blame. Then Carlos DeLuna now stands as a symbol of how fast justice can turn into injustice. Of how one name, one lie, can lead to a death sentence. He didn't kill Wanda Lopez. He tried to tell them. But the system didn't listen. Number 3, Derek Bentley. Derek was 19 years old. But mentally, he was still a child. He couldn't read or write properly. He had epilepsy. And an IQ of just 66. He had been bullied most of his life. Quiet. Lonely. He wanted to fit in. And then he met Christopher Craig, just 16 years old. Tough. Loud. And always in trouble. That night, Derek followed him. Onto the rooftop. Into danger. Neighbors saw the two boys climbing the warehouse. So they called the police. Soon, the rooftop was surrounded. Officers shouted, "Come down." Derek was already caught. He was standing still. Unarmed. But Craig had a revolver. As the police got closer, Derek shouted, "Let him have it, Chris." And then, a gunshot rang out. Officer Sidney Miles was shot in the head. He died instantly. Craig kept firing. Then he tried to jump off the roof. He broke his back. And was arrested. So was Derek. Even though he didn't shoot anyone. Even though he had no gun. The court said those words, "Let him have it," were a command to kill. In court, things moved fast. Craig was too young to face execution. So the focus shifted to Derek. The prosecution said, "He told Craig to shoot." But others said, "He meant give the gun to the police." It didn't matter. The jury listened to the state. They saw a crime. They wanted someone to pay. And Derek Bentley, the boy with the mental age of 11, was sentenced to death. People all over Britain were horrified. Newspapers printed headlines. "Don't hang Bentley. Stop this madness." Over 200 members of Parliament asked for mercy. Thousands signed petitions. Even the judge who sentenced him asked for clemency. But the Home Secretary said no. And the Queen didn't stop it. On January 28, 1953, at 9 a.m., Derek Bentley was led to the gallows. He was just 19. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He asked for one thing. "Please tell my family I love them." Then, the trap door opened. And just like that, he was gone. Derek's parents never gave up. They fought for decades, saying their son was innocent, saying the courts got it wrong. Years passed. People forgot. But the family kept pushing. They searched for documents, appealed again and again. And finally, the truth came out. In 1998, after 45 years, the British court ruled. Derek Bentley was denied a fair trial. His conviction is unsafe. It is quashed. He was pardoned. Officially. But Derek was already buried. The family had lost him. 4. Joe Arridy. Joe was born in Pueblo, Colorado, in 1915. His parents were Syrian immigrants. They were poor. They worked on the railroads. From a young age, people knew Joe was different. He couldn't talk right. He couldn't learn in school. He smiled a lot. But he didn't understand the world around him. Doctors later said his mental age was 6 years old. He didn't even know what death meant. On August 15, 1936, something terrible happened. Two sisters, Dorothy and Barbara Drain, were attacked in their home. Dorothy was killed. Barbara survived. The town was in shock. People wanted justice, fast. A man named Frank Aguilar was arrested. He had a motive. He had the murder weapon. He was guilty. But then police heard about Joe. They thought he looked suspicious. And they took him in. Joe didn't understand what was happening. The sheriff said Joe confessed. But there was no lawyer. No witness. No tape. No writing. And Joe? He didn't even know what confess meant. They told him what to say. He nodded. He smiled. He agreed. They said, "Did you go to the house?" Joe, "Yes." "Did you hurt the girl?" Joe, "Yes." But Joe didn't know what he was agreeing to. He was just trying to make the adults happy. Joe's trial was quick. His lawyer tried. He told the jury Joe was like a child. He couldn't understand what was going on. He didn't know right from wrong. But the jury didn't care. They saw a murder. They saw a simple boy. And they made him the scapegoat. They sentenced Joe to death by gas chamber. Joe didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just kept playing with his toy train. He shared his desserts with other prisoners. He told guards he wanted to be friends. He smiled all the time. The warden said, "He doesn't know what's happening. He's like a little boy." Even the guards begged the governor to stop it. But the system wouldn't listen. On January 6, 1939, Joe was led to the gas chamber. He had his toy train with him. He didn't understand. When asked if he had any last words, he said, "No, sir." He sat calmly. They strapped him in. The gas was released. And Joe just smiled. Until his smile faded. And then, silence. Years later, the truth came out. Frank Aguilar, the first man arrested, was the real killer. His fingerprints were at the crime scene. He had the murder weapon. He had a clear motive. He was executed too. But Joe should have never been involved. In 2011, Joe Arridy was given a posthumous pardon. 72 years too late. Number 5. Cameron Todd Willingham. Todd was just 23 years old. Poor. Jobless. But trying his best. He had tattoos. A temper. And a past full of mistakes. But he loved his daughters. People said he'd do anything for them. The fire broke him. He screamed in the street. He punched a wall. He begged. Why not me? Why not me? But the police weren't convinced. Fire inspectors searched the burned house. They saw signs they believed meant arson. Patterns on the floor. Charring under the doorways. The way the windows broke. They said, someone poured gasoline in the house. And they pointed to Todd. He was arrested for murder just weeks after losing his daughters. At trial, the state painted Todd as a monster. They said he didn't cry enough. They said he didn't try to save his kids. They pointed to his tattoos and past behavior. They showed the jury burned furniture. Charred baby clothes. One witness even claimed he confessed in jail. There was no hard proof. Just fire patterns. Old science. And emotion. The jury said, guilty. Death. Todd spent 12 years on death row. He wrote letters. He read books. He begged for help. He said over and over, I didn't kill my kids. I loved them. His ex-wife stood by him for years. So did his friends. But Texas didn't stop the clock. And on February 17, 2004, they executed Cameron Todd Willingham by lethal injection. After Todd's death, something big happened. New fire experts reviewed the case. They said, the fire science used at trial was wrong. Totally outdated. The signs they called arson were normal fire behavior. There was no proof of arson. No gasoline. No accelerant. Just a tragic fire. And an innocent man. Remember the man who said Todd confessed in jail? Years later, he admitted he lied. He said the prosecutors offered him a reduced sentence if he helped. He never heard a confession. He just made it up. Todd's case went national. In 2009, 5 years after his death, a top fire scientist gave a shocking report. There is not a single piece of evidence this fire was arson. Even the Texas Forensic Science Commission agreed. But no court has officially cleared his name. No one was punished for the mistake. Todd's daughters were lost in a fire. And the system took him too.